Hello and welcome to Tabletop 24. I'm Alan and welcome to another episode of What Play Again, where we take a look at games that we've gotten to the table and evaluate how quickly we're going to get back to the table. With ever-growing collections, time can be precious, so we answer that question of would play again. Now you may notice I'm without John and Brian, and that's because this was done as a solo experience. Today we have Cantaloop Book 1 from Lookout Games. The reason why this was done as a solo experience, now you could play it with multiple people, but I think this is designed as that solo experience. It's yourself thinking rather than sort of discussing and going through it. You could play with more than one person, potentially a couple, but anything more than that, I think it would just get fiddly, and I'd much more recommend that you get that to multiple people rather than sort of passing it on to multiple people rather than playing it as a group. Now, first off, I'm going to try and avoid as many spoilers as I can, but without being able to show you anything, I can't go through it without any spoilers. So there may well be some spoilers as we go through. So if you don't want to see that, jump towards the end of the video. I'll try and put a timestamp for it so that you will only see my view on it. But essentially, there will be spoilers as we go through this. So fair warning, we're going to work onwards. So Cantaloop is a series of these adventures. This is the first one, book 1. There is a prelude to that. That is a free print and play version from Lookout Games that you can get from their website. I did sort of showcase it when I did the unboxing for Cantaloop. And I would highly recommend, if you are interested in this but don't want to splash out straight away, go and look at that because it's a real good taste of what's to come here. Cantaloop is an adventure game. We are going through a story, and people that are familiar with the likes of Monkey Island, all of the LucasArts games, there was a Discworld point-and-click adventure, and also more recently the likes of the Deponia series, are going to be very at home here if you like that sort of thing. That's what this game is trying to do. It's trying to recreate, but in a tabletop version. So moving straight into this, obviously now is the point of no return for spoilers. We're going to be opening this up and looking into it. When you open it up, you are going to be presented with several things. One will be a couple of decks of cards with numbers on the back, so those will be relevant, and I'll get to them in a second. An inventory checklist. Now, this will be your first sort of view of what's in the game in regards to the fact that there's a lot of this text as you go through, and it uses a sort of red acetate to decode the message that you're going to be coming across, and you'll be using that quite a lot throughout the game to read certain key bits of information. My first sort of negative of it is there is only one of these, and it is this size. If you lose it, you will have to find a sufficient replacement. Now, I don't know about you, but it's not something I have lying around, so treat this with the utmost care. It does slip in here and should be fairly safe, but if you've got it in a bag and it's jingling around a lot, you could end up losing that, so that is important to the game. So that's your inventory, so you're going to be picking up certain bits of information from here as you go through. You are presented with a lovely postcard of Cantaloop Island, which will, or Cantaloop the town, so which will enable you to visit certain locations when you unlock them. And there's a bit of information from the back. So pay attention to that, not to spoil too much, but pay very close attention to it when you go for the game. Then you have a key card. A lot of the text and the interactions are locked behind these key items. So as you go through the story, it will tell you to mark off certain boxes on here as you go through. And as you mark them off, that enables further interactions, potentially further conversations with people, or further use of an item that may have required you to do something to it previously. So you'll be marking off your progress as you go through. As you'll notice, this one is unused. I did print off a copy of this to use for my game, and you might not use all of them, and some people might use some others than others would, because there are a couple of routes through the game. It's not completely linear. Now, due to the nature of this type of game, and those that are familiar with point and clicks, you can do things in a certain order, but ultimately you are following a generic path as you go through. So that's obviously quite key to the game. You're going to need that to be marking down your progress as where you go. Straight off, there is a very good tutorial. One of the first items you are going to be presented with, and it's not to spoil it, is your magnifying glass. And what you'll see here is you will have codes that enable you to interact with certain information. And you'll see there in the example, this is the magnifying glass aligning to that. And what you're doing with that is then taking a look at what code that gives you and reading applicable information. And once you've read that information, that may mark off a tick, give you access to a new location, give you access to a new item. And there are 60 cards in this deck. Some are items, some are information, some change the sort of scenery that you're looking at. So, like I said, I won't go into them in many detail, but you will see. So, for instance, one of the early items you'll potentially get is a coat hanger. Gives you a bit of information, and you can use that coat hanger to interact with items, or you can just use it with a magnifying glass to look at what it actually is. So that's sort of the main sort of interaction. There will be bodies of text that you'll go through, and you'll see as you get there. There may be codes to decipher, which will correspond to the relevant information in the book. So you're really using a lot of information that you've got and gained to piece together the puzzle to get you to your end goal. And then you, like I say, will go on to certain conversations and the background and the story, and then you are straight in to the main game. Now, this isn't too much of a spoiler. I'm going to go straight to where you start, starting at the bottom of the lighthouse. As you'll see, you've got a scenery out in front of you. You've got some codes you can read straight off, certain things you might be able to look at or interact with. That's quite useful. Now, as I said, there may be a scenery change at some point when you unlock certain things, and you may get through to a point where you've changed up what you're looking for, or you've got different items that you can interact with. And you'll see on the left, these are all the relative code words that will be relevant to this area. Some will be relevant on the inventory, but most of what you're going to interact with in each scene will be relevant to this place. And you will find yourself coming back to places once you've developed a bit more of the story, or you've developed a bit more of the items that you've got, or changed items potentially. So all fully interactive on it. Now, the components for it are absolutely fantastic. I think the book is very well written and very well done. There's a good story that goes throughout the game, and it does present itself very well. On the story, I think it's very well written. It's set up across potentially about a day or so, and there's a lot to take in on the story as you go through it. And like any good point and click adventure, it's humorous. It points fun at itself, and you will find, and I think it's on this one, that I'm just gonna put that one on the top one there, and it's on most of the pages, so you may read it. We don't know what that is. We've just picked it out, and it's, hey, what are you doing? Nobody told you to read this code. Take this card. So it will essentially point you down the direction of the story, but it's very tongue-in-cheek. It knows it's humorous. It breaks a little bit of the fourth wall, and it sort of presents a very humorous laden story as you go through. It's fairly adult. There's a few adult themes as you go in there, but it's sort of, some of it's tongue-in-cheek. It's not fully grotesque. It's not fully sexualized. It's a bit of a wink-wink, nudge-nudge type moment, and there's a few bits in there. But again, I would liken this to any of the point-and-click adventures, particularly those in the 90s that were really so prolific. So, yeah, humor, fantastic. Story, sort of fantastic. It challenges you as well. So coming on to the puzzles, I'm not particularly great at the point and click. I always like them, I always love them, but there's always at one point I do tend to look at a guide or a hint. But these do challenge you, and it is a kind of, well, what did I see? Where did I see it? And how do I interact? Some of it is very logical. Some of it flows quite simple, and you'll see and piece that together quite easily. Some of it takes a little bit more sort of nuancing to go, oh, well, maybe this works with this, and try it. If you try and force the game, now, again, coming back to the video games that this is imitating, there's a lot of times where I just run around trying to click items and see what interacts with everything. And you do get that bit of humorous of, hey, what are you doing? That doesn't go there. But if you try and force everything, you will have to go for every single combination. if you try and guess it, it knows that you're trying to guess it, and it will maybe throw you red herrings, or it may throw essentially some dodgy bit of information, or it may just take fun at you. So it knows what it's doing. The system knows how to avoid that brute force. But if you need a guide or you need help, there is an incredibly good hint system in this game. And what it will do is it will know where you are by what you have ticked off on here. Again, spoilers for essentially the volume of what you've got to do, but there's two main storylines you'll be running through, and wherever you've got to on the key code is essentially will tell you where you can read up to and what your next item to get is, essentially, or what scene you need to go to or who you need to talk to. And it will give you a couple of tips before it gives you the actual solution. So I think the hint system is fantastic. I did end up using it, and there was a reason why, and I'll get onto that. But the hint system works really well. It points you right in the right direction. And I must admit, when I was getting towards the end of the story, I was incredibly tired, and it was late at night, and I probably shouldn't have been playing it at that point. But I was like, right, no, I can't see a way around this. Rather than spending sort of some time trying to fix it, I was just like, I'm just going to look up a hint. Just want to get past this hurdle, and after that, I just plowed through the rest of the story. So it is good for the hint system. But what I will say is this, and again, going back to the video games, if you've played any of those, then there's always that one puzzle that the solution does not make sense. And you will see that in here. There's probably one or two puzzles that you kind of go, why have I done that? But it works. And I think that's possibly a tribute to the genre of its type. So, there's that in there. Particularly, I think in the prologue as well. There's very much I've thrown this down here, and why have I done this? But it pushes the story forward. So be prepared for that to crop out. Yeah. I played this across 3 sessions, and I suffered for that. It took me around 5 hours to complete the whole thing, but I think I could have got that down if I'd have played it in one session. And it was remembering where you got to. Yes, I was ticking stuff off the key card, but I then had to go back over old ground to find out what I'd done and what items were really important to me at the time. Yes, the hint system worked really well in that regard, so you could see, okay, well, what's my next objective to get to? What lead do I need to follow? So that's a good use if you're playing this across multiple sessions. If you've only got an hour slot, half an hour slot, or you can pick that up from the hint system. But I would very recommend playing this in a one-shot playthrough, purely for that reason. It makes sense doing it that way. And if I was to replay this, I would do it, and I'd hit it all in one shot. I've mentioned this a few times throughout, but it's nostalgic. It really sung with me in regards to all of those old point and clicks I used to play or still play. So for me, it was a big win on that. The humor was in there. That was fantastic. So I think that's very much the overview of how this plays and what my thoughts and feelings on it. So getting to the crux of the question of would play again. I mean, no, I wouldn't play this again because I've already played it and I know the outcome and there's no variability to that outcome. Yes, you could probably go on a slightly diverging path to get to the end goal, or I could do things in a different order, but the story's the same. I'm still going to get the same outcome of the end of the story there. I don't believe there's any multiple endings I may have missed. I went back through cards that hadn't come up and stuff like that, and I'm very sure that there's no multiple endings, so you're very much following the story. But I would play this again soon because there is book number 2 out. Now, I've heard a lot of different things and varying opinions on that, but I think I'm going to give that a go. And I want to see where this leads. I think book 3 is due out soon as well. So I want to follow the story. I like the story. I like the humor. I like what they're doing. The art style was fantastic. So it's a play again soon for me because I'm going to get the next one, not because I'm going to replay this. But I would recommend this to any fan of the point and click adventure. Now, like I say, it's not perfect, but I think it's a great homage to the genre, and it really fills that niche in a board game environment. We've got the likes of Chronicles of Crime or Deckscape or Unlock that do those puzzles and sort of that investigation piece. But as far as I'm aware, there's nothing quite out there that does it like this. And with those sort of tributes to that genre of video games. So yeah, absolutely recommend it. And hopefully I'll be getting book 2 soon. So thank you for watching along with this episode of We'll Play Again. If you haven't done so already, check out the other videos on our channel, give us a like and a subscribe, and we will catch you next time. Take care.